This is Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Hall. This week, we're talking about some new digs and new recipes for an old brand with Lee Lord. She's the head brewer at Narragansett's new brewery in Providence, Rhode Island. We're going to be talking styles, working at companies with a big history, historical reenactments, and gruits. But we're also going to be talking about the future. But first, an invitation to check out beeredge.com, to sign up for the newsletter, to read articles, to find podcast episodes, and more, and to check out our merch section for the This Week in Rauk Beer, Camp Rauk Beer, and Defend Pilsner glassware and shirts line. We're also on social media at The Beer Edge, and be sure to join the This Week in Rauk Beer page on Facebook. Also, NZ Hops is a proud sponsor of Drink Beer, Think Beer. Harvest has officially ended in New Zealand, and there are exciting hops to choose from, including Nelson Sauvin, Motueka, Rawaka, and the newest hop on the lineup, Nectaron. The white wine, stone fruit, and tropical fruit notes, layered with pine, citrus, and herbal notes, offer a range of flavors unlike any other growing region in the world. Learn more about what they can do for your beers by visiting nzhops.co.nz or finding NZ Hops on social media. Narragansett is a brewery, or a brand, that's been around since the late 1800s. It was a revered New England lager brand that, after Prohibition, went into the wane and eventually closed down. It was revived about 15 years ago and has seen such tremendous growth that it is now in the top 30 of craft breweries in the United States. The growth was largely built on the backs of contract production brewing for lager, coffee stout, some shandies in the summer, and a few recipes here and there. Over the last few weeks, the brand has opened up its first permanent location since Prohibition that will serve as a Gansett gathering place and a brewery to showcase innovation. At the helm of the brewery is Lee Lord. She's been in New England brewing for her entire career, working for storied and well-established brands like Cambridge Brewing Co, where she actually brewed at Mystic, Smuttynose, and the now shuttered Watch City. There's an allure to working for well-established brands where culture is already in place. But there's a challenge that comes with working on a brand new system and being tasked with moving a brewery forward while writing a new chapter of its history. She spoke to me via phone from Rhode Island about her career and the last few weeks of getting a system dialed in and beer ready for the people. And I started off by asking her to back up some claims she's made on social media over the last few weeks. Here's our conversation. You've made a pretty... I think you've thrown down the gauntlet of declaring this the summer of cream ale.
It seems to be kind of a Providence or Rhode Island thing. You know, Moniker, an amazing brewery across the river from us, has done an amazing cream ale. Jenny Cream is all over the bars right now. And then Rejects Beer, a cool brewery over in Middletown, Rhode Island, does a good cream ale too. And it you know, people have just been stoked on the cream ales that they're making, and that enthusiasm is carried over to me. I love drinking them, which is something I didn't know about myself until this spring. But you know, they go down easy. They're super fun to drink. They're super fun to talk to other brewers about. Yeah.
Wait, you got to qualify that. They're super fun to talk to other brewers about.
Yeah.
What is a brewer to brewer? Let us into this to this walk-in cooler with you guys. And what is a brewer to brewer conversation about cream ale? What does that sound like?
It's a lot like brewer to brewer geeking out about lagers, but not as technical. You know, cream ales can be kind of silly. There isn't such a template for them to be perfect. They just have to be, you know, kind of clean and bright and beer flavored beer. And that's what brewers want to drink. And, you know, so whenever brewers visit each other's breweries, we always cheers with a cream ale now, just because, you know, there's no geeking out over hop isomerization or lagering temps or anything like that. It's like our stress-free, easy drinking, fun to drink beer.
Have the consumers come around to it? I mean, I guess you're saying like you're seeing it on tap. You're up in the Providence area, but like, is there? Are people following through, or is this just again brewers trying to convince us drinkers, you know, that it's time for us to start drinking X?
You know, I can't speak for sure because mine hasn't hit the taps yet, so I can't track how well it's selling. But it's, again, at Moniker across the river, it's their best-selling beer. It seems like that became their house beer, and everybody who goes there has to get a cream ale before they try anything else. So just based on that, I'd say yes, but that's not a huge swath of market to take from.
So you have a bright, shiny new brew house with Narragansett branding all over it, I imagine.
Yep.
And you've brewed a cream ale on it?
We have brewed cream ale on it. We renamed it Exit 1C instead of cream ale because we couldn't get it to clear up quite as brightly as we wanted. So we're going to retry that one. Exit 1C is delicious, but it's not perfect. So we're not calling it the Gansett cream ale.
So, all right, let's back up a little bit. Gansett is an old brewery that was gone for a while. It came back. And it had been brewing at other places for quite a long time. And now you guys have built yourself a pub, and you have this bright, shiny new brew house. And this is Gansett's first stainless in quite some time. That's theirs. What'd you get? What's your system?
We got a 20-barrel craft kettle system from New Orleans, Louisiana.
And what's your cellar like?
Our cellar, so we have 8 30-barrel conical fermenters, 3 20-barrel conicals, a 40-barrel lagering tank, a 20-barrel lagering tank, and then a couple of bright tanks.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, so we have plenty of space to be able to geek out.
So, and a lot of the recipes that are going to be coming from the pub are not necessarily the ones that like we get in cans or draft or things like that. What's distro going to be like? Is it just come to the pub and drink, or are you going to be?
No, so I know, especially with our flagship IPA, which is called Music Express, we've done all of Rhode Island and Southern Mass. I think we're doing all of Mass starting this week in Connecticut, and we're going to see how that goes. I don't really know what the plans are beyond that. Yeah, some of the beers are pub only. A lot of the beers we're ending up canning. We have a mobile canning line in a couple times a week, generally.
Okay.
So we're doing really short runs of pretty much all the beers we do over there.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about recipe development as we get further along into this. But so you have this 20-barrel system. It's brand new. Nobody's ever used it before. You're the first head brewer on this. Everywhere else that you've been in your career, there have been systems that are old, established, have their own idiosyncrasies, and you have to know exactly when to hit a lever at a certain time. Yeah, they're characters in and of themselves. And I'm talking about the breweries that you worked with at Watch City and up at Smuttynose, and I guess out at Mystic, right?
We had Sean Hill's old 20-barrel metalcraft system at Mystic.
So like size, isn't different for you, but like, what was it like learning on some of those systems that had been around well before you ever walked in as an employee?
It was, the steps were very well defined. Like at this moment, you open this valve 2 clicks, and then you set the pump to this, and it was very exact. There was not a lot of playing around except for like extreme circumstances when you wanted to tweak something. Like everything had already been figured out to a T for years and years and years. So there was really no guesswork in that. So, I really didn't get a good understanding of the fine tuning that goes into learning a brand new system and dialing things in exactly the way you want them, and specifically why you want them that way. You want the water flowing at this rate when you mash in because it hydrates well, and you want the grain flowing at this rate through the auger because that way your grain and your water end at the same time. It didn't take, because our system is semi-automated at Narragansett, it didn't take too long to sort of figure out, and we had craft kettle folks there to help us be like, okay, this doesn't look right, try this. This is what we usually do, maybe try this. Maybe you want to set the auger to 35% instead of 50.
Yeah.
But it definitely was, like, especially that first week, it definitely was a steep learning curve, and there was literally no room for error. Our first batch that we brewed on that system was Bohemian Pills. And I did that, A, because it's a very simple recipe, and B, because if we fuck it up, we can just sewer it, which thankfully we didn't end up having to do. But,
Yeah.
I wanted to leave room for that chance. But then the second batches we did were our flagship IPA and then our first double IPA. And those were scheduled to go into cans 2 weeks later. So it was like, do not mess these up.
And how did they turn out?
They turned out good.
Okay.
I'm not going to say great. There was definitely some fussing with temperatures and things like that we were still dialing in. They came in both a little bit under ABV for what we wanted, but they turned out good, and we got them into cans.
So having worked on, I guess it's fair to call them legacy systems versus brand new out of the box, although I know it's not a box, but like, do you have a preference now, do you think?
I don't think so. They both have their pluses and minuses. Like sometimes when I can't get the automation to hit the temp I want because it gets moody some days, the robots sometimes fight me on that. I wish I had a 2-vessel direct fire, totally manual system. Other days I'm like, wow, the future's great. I don't have to worry about my knockout temp. I can pitch yeast while I'm knocking out because I know the temp's not going to spike on me.
Are you seeing some of those idiosyncratic, I don't know, bits start to appear in your system? I mean, you've had a couple of months now, or a couple of weeks working on it, getting stuff ready. Like, as you were saying before, it's 2 clicks this way with this valve, and pull this and all that. Are you starting to see things develop in your system that as new folks come on to the brewery that you're going to have to start passing down?
Yeah,
knowledge?
Our system definitely gets a little moody sometimes and has a mind of her own occasionally. So it's like, if I'm mashing in or sparging it, if somebody else uses any of the hot water to do a CIP process anywhere else in the brewery, I'm going to have to watch my temperatures really carefully because the pump doesn't tend to like that. Things like that.
That's like flushing the toilet when somebody's taking a shower.
Yeah, exactly. Like our first time we tried to double batch in one day, we were trying to knock out and mash in at the same time, which we realized we cannot do.
Okay.
Because the water usage and just dialing in all those temperatures is a little much for our system. So we've just learned how to time things better and things like that.
And that's normal, right? I mean, that's just like a normal part of brewing.
Yeah, and this is the first time I've ever done multiple batches in one day. So even just doing that on any system takes some getting used to.
When you first got into brewing, when you first decided that you wanted to make brewing a career, you walked into Watch City, which was a small little brew pub that I guess had been around for a couple of years before you started, right? And
yep.
You just asked for a job?
Yeah, so I had met Aaron, the brewmaster there, through Beer Fest and through mutual friends and things like that. Actually, a good friend of mine had been his assistant previously. So I had poured with him at Beer Fest and things like that and gotten to know him and really started to enjoy the social aspects of being a brewer. And meanwhile, I had homebrewed a little bit and things like that and really decided that this is something I loved. So yeah, one day I just walked in and was like, hey, can I help? And he was like, here's a mop. Yeah.
When you so years and years and years ago, I read a book called Massachusetts Breweries with my wife. Actually, she did the travel part of it. I did the beer part of it. And I remember going into Watch City well before I wrote this book. But then when I was doing the research for the book, and I really started to pay attention to that Frankenstein that was in the basement, that brew system for folks, and the brewery's now since closed. But for folks who never had the, I don't know, I was going to say honor, but opportunity is probably just the safest word, to witness it in person. What were you all brewing on back then?
We were brewing on a 14 barrel direct fire Peter Austin system.
And it was like, wasn't it wood paneled?
Yep. Yep. So that system actually is now at a brewery called Stone Cow that's out in Western Mass. They bought it at auction.
Oh, no shit. I know those guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's still chugging today. I think they've encased it now in stone instead of wood. But
So it was a sight to behold, at least. It was like in sort of like a pit in the brewery, and
yeah. So when we mashed out, we would have to shovel it out of the top of the mash tun instead of out of the manway on the side.
Oh. So as you were thinking about the design of Gansett and this new pub, were you thinking about all of the other systems that you had been on and things that you never wanted to do again or wouldn't wish on anybody else going forward?
A little bit. Most of it though was really just the basics. Like, it's not direct fire, so when the flame goes out, it's not gonna fill the room with gas and kill everyone or anything like that. I really didn't know my life could be this good until I got the system. We worked with a guy called John Carpenter, who used to be with Dogfish and Golden Road, I believe.
Sure.
And he helped us commission our entire brewery. So he was brought on board for this project even before I was.
So he knows what he's doing. He's been around to a few places as well.
So he went down to Craft Kettle and really got all the bells and whistles they could put on this thing put on. That it's stuff that I wouldn't even think about. Like, we have a touch screen up on the brew deck where I can control all the pneumatic valves, but we also have little switches below. So if I'm doing anything below deck and I need to close or open a valve, I can just hit a switch that's right next to me, which is something that I would never even think of, but it really makes my life so much easier.
There are some brewers listening to this right now who are turning green, hearing about all these various bells and whistles. So,
and that actually, John didn't request those. Craft Kettle was like, you know what? We're going to try something cool and new.
Really?
And they gave this to us, and now it's part of their standard build, I think.
Okay.
I don't know if they do it for everyone, but it's
I don't know.
Yeah,
at some point, I'm going to have to start charging them for advertising for all of these nice things that you're saying. But
I'm sorry. When they came out to teach us this brew system, there's this guy that works there, Jeremy King, who's just fantastic, and he's an incredible brewer, but he's also like a therapist. He spends the most stressful week of people's lives with them, and teaches them how to brew. And I don't think we'd be making good beer if we had not had that training from him.
Has this been? I often think about in steps of careers, you want to keep being challenged, and it keeps things interesting, and you want to, have really hard days, or at least I do, because it makes the easier days just a little bit easier and, a little bit more rewarding. In your career now, has this been the most challenging? Has this been the hardest thing that you've had to do, commissioning and starting this new brewery?
Other than just hanging on and knowing that something better is coming, absolutely. This is especially knowing that this was looming during the whole pandemic. Imposter syndrome's a thing, and just watching this brew date come over the horizon, being like, oh my god, I haven't even brewed anything in a year. Is my beer gonna be good? I've never touched the system before. Absolutely. But I gotta say, it's also been one of the most amazing things I've done, and we also have a great production team at Narragansett that I wouldn't have been able to do it without.
All right, so Aaron at Watch City handed you a mop, and you got to work. And there's a lot of brewers and beer industry folks who started in a similar way, and then. For a lot of your career, you spent time in the cellar, not necessarily on the brew deck.
That's right. I didn't really hit the deck. Watch City was all hands on deck, and
sure.
I got some recipes in there. But then once I went to Smuttynose, I was cellar purely. I was running the centrifuge and cleaning tanks. So it wasn't until I got to Cambridge Brewing Company that I got back onto the deck and really, kind of got my hands dirty up there. There's
something about cellar work, though, where it doesn't get I mean, even on shows like this, it doesn't get the. I don't want to say respect because I certainly respect what it is, but it doesn't get the attention that it deserves.
Yeah.
Because it's not just like, oh, hey, we're having a lot of fun and we just, hit our switches. And now, hey, the mobile canner's here and you have beer. I mean, cellar work is so critically important and so often overlooked, I think, by the general public. For those who might not be all that familiar, or for all of the fellow cellar dwellers that are listening in right now, talk about the importance of that work.
Hot side is such a very, very, very small part of the life of a beer. Hot side is about 6 hours, and that spends, if it's an ale, 2 weeks in the cellar where you have to, depending on the yeast strain, monitor temperature every day. Sanitation is of utmost important in the whole beer process, and that all takes place in the cellar. Every single element of cellar work is so intensely critical to the success and the quality of a beer. Keeping oxygen out of your process, doing a transfer clean and smooth, and not beating your beer up and letting any O2 in. Cellar work is 80% of why a good beer turns out good. I'd say hot side and recipe development is, well, it's certainly important. You can screw up and backpedal from that. Cellar work, there's no room for error. You got to be on your shit, and it's long and grueling. You gotta can beer, then clean tanks, then transfer beer, and you have to be on it every second of every day. Dragging hoses around, making sure everything is sanitized always.
For those years that you were in the cellar, though, was it always the goal to get back up onto the brew deck, or to get onto the brew deck?
It's a lot of places, I have to say, other than Smuttynose, which was a much bigger operation. So they had like a dedicated hot side team, dedicated centrifuge person, which is what I sort of became there, and then dedicated cellar crew, packaging crew. The other places I worked, Watch City and CBC, were so small that everybody kind of wore every single hat. And so that was sort of the brewing world that I was used to, and sort of what I took to be as the norm. Once, at CBC, things became a little more skewed, where there was, the brewmaster, and then the head brewer, and then the cellar crew. I had aspired to wear that head brewer hat once I sort of got around that environment and realized, there was a step above the all hands on deck people. It was like, okay, now I have something else to shoot for.
I'll have more with Lee Lord of Narragansett in just a moment, but first, if you're thinking about beer competitions and the newly announced New Zealand Pale Ale and New Zealand IPA categories, visit NZ Hops online at nzhops.co.nz or find them on social media. There you'll learn about varieties bursting with white wine, stone fruit, tropical fruit aromas, and more. Hops from New Zealand are unlike any others found on the globe. Discover them today. And now, back to Rhode Island and Lee Lord. She's the head brewer of Narragansett's new brewery and pub. There's been a lot of talk in the last couple of weeks of opportunities that have presented themselves to women for career advancement, or doors that have been shut, as well. And have you identified with any with some of those posts that have gone up?
I have. Yeah, I have. I've found, and my positions have been a little bit unique. Like at Mystic, working for CBC, I was the only one who did my job, and I didn't really cross over with the pub.
Yeah.
That much. But I did see folks entering the company and getting promoted faster than I was just kind of stuck over in my own little bubble, not really having any upward mobility at all. And that was tough. Yeah.
You mentioned early on some of the toughest days are the ones where you're just hanging on, but knowing that something better was coming.
Yeah. Like some days, especially when something goes wrong, or you have like a hop geyser after or during dry hopping, and you're like, man, this one sucked. Like, the cellar was hot today and it was rough, and I don't know, man. I don't know if this is for me anymore. Like, there were definitely days like that where you just had to hang on, and hope that it got better, because those days, they can string together and then it's tough. It's like, well, maybe I want to work front of house now. I don't know. I don't know if this is for me. So I found it really helpful to set little milestones for myself. Like, all right, Oktoberfest is coming, and if I make it till then, like, good. Let's just try and make it till then, and then we'll pick the next milestone to make it to.
But I mean, mental health wise, which is something that we talk about on the show quite a bit, though. I mean, that's got to have its own pressures. Like, that has to have its own sort of effect on just everyday life of just. I mean, and maybe they're positive effects of like, okay, if I can make it to Oktoberfest, if I can make it to Thanksgiving, if I can make it to Christmas, if I can make it to, whatever it is, like maybe is that a happy thing, or is that a.
It not always. Sometimes, and this seems kind of sad to say, but like sometimes just getting that next thing to make it to is like, oh yeah, all right, there's another one. I didn't have one before that, but I'm taking a vacation in August, and if I can just make it till then, like, great, I think I can do that. I don't know what that says mental health wise. Like, it's definitely, like, especially when you're working by yourself, it's definitely tough, and you get in your head and there's kind of nothing to break that up.
Because a lot of the recipes, when you're saying working by yourself, so when you were out at Mystic, you were doing the production recipes for Cambridge Brewing Company.
That's right.
Which is sort of like set in a book somewhere, and like it's what we all know and drink and enjoy, and they tasted great, so nice job. But there's not a ton of creativity as well, I imagine.
Right.
So, as a brewer, and I'm just sort of thinking about like other brewers that I've talked with over the years of like who are in similar positions. Where were you channeling that creativity into, like work wise? Or were you not? Yeah. Or were you just hoping for Oktoberfest? Yeah.
Keg cleaning. Yeah, I was just praying for Oktoberfest and like just counting down the days. Actually,
that's your next beer name, by the way, is praying for Oktoberfest. And
yeah, we'll write that on the bottom of the cans.
Yeah. But it's got to come out in like March. It's yeah.
Yeah, I'm a really social being, so working in that environment was real tough for me. So I really channeled all of that energy into beer fest. Like anytime there was an in-store tasting, anytime there was a fest, I wanted to be right there every single session, just, kind of soaking up everybody else's positive energy.
So now you're at Gansett and you get to write your recipes and you get to put them out there. As you think about your career and the places that you've worked. I mean, these are historic breweries. These are important breweries that you've worked at that have a ton of tradition behind them. And I imagine at some point you could have gone to any number of startups and done the head brewer job there, and made hazies or lactose everythings, and I
do make hazies right now.
No, that's fine. I'm not knocking them. I'm just saying, but you could have gone to a place that had abstract art on an aluminum can and Edison bulbs and things like that. That hasn't had a chance to write its history yet. Is there an appeal for you as a brewer to work at legacy places that have been around for 3 decades or more?
Well, yeah, they're less likely to go under, for one.
I would point you to Smuttynose for a second, but like, sure.
Yeah, or Watch City. I showed up to work at Watch City and the doors were locked.
So
I had to break in and get my hiking boots back. So yeah, that's definitely.
Wait, you lost hiking boots inside of Watch City?
I showed up to work and it was locked. Like the bank just locked the doors, and there was beer in the open fermenters and everything like that. And so I didn't get to go back for a few months for the bank auction, and it smelled like death. It smelled so bad. So I went in and I got my meat smoker and my hiking boots and a bunch of stuff I had there, and they tried to call the cops on me for stealing from the auction.
Oh man. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
it would have wound up at Stone Cow, and they probably would have
yeah,
been cool to, yeah.
yeah.
All right, but there's a hole in your argument of like it's not going to close behind you. Like like Smuttynose had a pretty rough time when you were there. Watch City.
Yeah.
I'm not calling you the angel of death, but
I, and Mystic went under too. So not every brewery I've worked for, but every brewery I've worked in has hit some trouble. I have called myself the angel of death.
but the difference of regardless of whether or not they've closed or are in tough shape, places that have an established history before you walk in the door, is there a reverence for that and a desire to become a part of that history and to help shape that history forward? Like, how do you approach working for legacy breweries, long-term breweries, as opposed to, and I guess you don't have a ton of experience with like startups, but
I don't know. I think it fits with just the way my brain works with the whole brewing process as a whole, because, for example, at Gansett, I really love to do like some of the old stuff. Like we did the Bohemian Pills, we did the Porter. And I tried to stay as true to those old recipes as I could, but made them better.
So when you say old recipes, you mean like the ones that have been in the, like the Gansett ones, like going back, to the 1800s?
No. Just the ones going back maybe a decade, the ones that they were canning over at the Guild. Yeah.
All
yeah.
right.
I haven't even gotten a peek at the old recipes.
Are you going to be able to, do you think?
I don't know if somebody has them.
Okay.
Yeah.
But is there... I don't know if I'm even asking this question the right way, but is it places that are set in certain ways, known for certain things, is it tough to be creative, or have you found, at least where you are now, that there's a willingness to be creative and to be thinking about like
a willingness? Like we have right now, we have 2 New England IPAs on, 2 New England DIPAs and an IPA on, and then 2 sours.
Okay.
And the public is slowly warming up to them. Like Bo Pills is far and above our bestseller. But I think that this helps introduce a new audience to Narragansett that otherwise kind of wouldn't be there, and word is still sort of trickling out for that. My boss is definitely open to us brewing. If we make a strong case, like we want to brew a lactose cookie crumble sour, I think Mark would be like, okay, like
that's Mark Hellendrum, the president of the company. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but our clientele is sort of skewed. Like we're getting the new school drinkers, but we're also getting like the good old Rhode Island Gansett drinkers whose fathers and grandfathers and whatever worked at the old brewery, and they I don't think they're there yet.
But I mean, it's not like the brewery hasn't messed around with stuff. I mean, you guys put out Italian ice flavored beers, and there's a hard tea under the name of Gansett. I mean, it's you're doing stuff that has mass appeal.
Yeah.
But is there a risk because lager is lager and so ingrained in the consciousness that, if you do put out even just a solid West Coast IPA, that could be a tough sell to consumers because they think of you as a lager brewery? And I say that like sort of thinking about like Sam Adams, right, which has put out some pretty good IPAs over the years, also some pretty not great IPAs in my opinion, but like people saw them as just the lager brewery, and it was a tough sell for them.
I think we walk a fine edge where the tried and true lager fans do not want an IPA, and the tried and true IPA fans do not want a Gansett. So we're kind of finding this middle ground of like, hey, just come drink our beer, have fun. Like, you know, um, I think we're still hitting our stride with that.
You have all this cellar space. You have a lot of, you have a whole career now in front of you at Gansett. What do you want to put in those tanks that isn't there yet? What's the dream beer to go into one of those?
Oh God. So last Friday I brewed a classic English bitter. Had I not brewed that last Friday, I would say that. I would say either a mild or a barley wine. Those are two of my favorite styles, and I love brewing them. um, yeah, one of those.
Can we talk about miles for a second?
Yeah.
I mean, we started off on cream ales and the brewer conversations on cream ales, which I'm not fully convinced that that's happening, but I feel like you might have just made that up.
I did. I totally made that up.
It's like cream ale is trying to make fetch happen. It's just, and I love Jenny Cream. I've said this on other shows in the past. I buy, or pre-pandemic, I would buy a 30-pack of Jenny Cream at the top of 4th of July weekend, and I would have a cooler of it in the car, as we would go to barbecues and stuff like that. Like, that's what I would drink, and then I would have another cooler filled with, other beer that had come into the house of, IPAs and lactose and all sorts of stuff, and I'd give that to all of my friends, and I would just drink Jenny Cream for all of the 4th of July weekend, which I'm fully planning on doing again this year. But
that's kind of me with Carlsberg, yeah.
But English milds, I think that's got to be like the hardest road at this point, to try to
Yeah.
to try to sell to people, and even trying to sell to brewers. Like, I think like brewers like might like talking about it or might be intrigued by it, but I know like 3 brewers who do it out of like 8,000 of you.
Yeah, it's Chris Loring at Notch has a good saying. They always called May mild month, and they brew a mild until he realized that mild month turned into mild fucking 3 months. Well, they tried to kick their mild, so they don't do it
Because you were the
anymore.
only one there drinking it.
Yeah, probably that, and Zach Anzak, their sales guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if I lived closer, I would drink it. All right, so now we have 3 going, and there seems to be a growing consensus. But like, you have an audience now listening, presumably. Why should the beer drinkers listening to this show right now be going out and asking for, by style, an English mild of their local breweries?
Because you can't get more classic, and there's not a more beautiful love note to malt out there. It's especially on cask. The mild is one of the most beautiful things. It's so smooth. It's nice and low EBV, hopefully, unless you do a historic one. And I don't know. For me, I'm a huge Anglophile. Like, I love watching my British murders and listening to my Britpop and whatever. So milds just fit in with my overall taste preference with everything in life. I reenact a British soldier's wife for the Revolutionary War. so bringing cask and mild to that kind of shit is one of my favorite things to do.
I didn't. Do you have a specific person that you play in the reenactments?
I
Okay.
don't. My boyfriend is, excuse me. My boyfriend is one of the commanders of His Majesty's 40th Regiment of Foot, which is a British unit that fought in the Revolutionary War. So I just kind of tag along with them.
Okay, so you're not playing you're not reenacting a specific.
No.
Have you written a backstory?
Not much of one. I know kind of where I've come from, and where I was stationed in the States, but that's about it.
Okay. See, I was like totally ready to just geek out on like Revolutionary War fiction, and then you just kind of took the wind out of my sails.
I'm sorry.
No,
I mean, we still can.
No, that's totally fine. No, it's totally fine. I'll have you back on. I'll have you back on our very special episode later on when we can talk about that.
Okay.
But love letter to malt. Love affair with malt. That directly plays into barley wine as well.
Yep. Yeah, I'm a malt lover. And barley wine and I go way back. Barley wine was what got me into beer. So I can't, like, if you ask me what I love about barley wine, it's the beer, but it's also like the memories and the lightning bolts that it set off in my brain, that got me interested. Just, that was the first thing that I had tried other than like a Magic Hat number 9 or a Stella. And I
Yeah.
was like, wait, I didn't know beer could be like this.
There was what was the brewery up in Vermont that used to make them? Is it Rock Art or Lost Art?
Rock art, yeah, with the
Yeah.
Vermonster, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the very first ones that I remember drinking, 25 years ago.
Yeah, mine was actually, so I got dragged on a double date to Cambridge Brewing Company, and it happened to be their barley wine fest. And I really wanted to impress my date, who was like, "Oh, you're not gonna like this. You don't drink beer. You drink appletinis. Just get a Chardonnay. We'll be quick." And I was like, "No, you know what? You're really cute. I'm gonna try the 2007 one." And this was in 2007, and that happened to be Blunderbuss. And kind of the rest is history. The first time I brewed Blunderbuss with Will Myers, I started crying, and he was like, "What is wrong with you?"
But there's a history and there's a story that can be told, and now being at Gansett and being a part of that story, for the reenactors 100 years from now, 300 years from now, that are telling the story of craft beer in America in the early part of this century, nerds that they are. Now I'm just writing fiction, but like, what do you want this story to be, for Gansett and this new pub, and your role there and the beers that you're making?
I want, I hate to say this, but I'm kind of a weird brewer. I learned from weird brewers, and I love weird brewers, and I'm a little bit of a weird brewer. Like, there's gonna be a Gansett Gruit at some point, and I would like to see, Gansett.
That's what puts it out of business. Yeah.
No, don't. Oh my God. Oh, I've had that same thought. Oh shit.
I can hear
Crap.
the stock price plunging right now. Yeah. Just on the mere thought of it. All right. No, there's going to be a Gansett Gruit. Awesome. Yeah.
Okay, maybe not. But I would like this little pub that we have in Providence to sort of be a hub of innovation and, get my weird little fingers out there a little bit. Thus far we've done pretty straight IPAs, porters, lagers. We have a Zwickel beer in the tank right now that's freaking awesome. But I want to be able to play, and I want that to carry through to the customer, and for them to be like, okay, there's a little more to Gansett than the lager and the shandy, and this is fun.
Internally, culture-wise, because this has also been a big part of the conversation that's been happening these days. As you're now, in a head brewer position, where you have a team, that you're working with and is working for you, has the conversation? Have you been thinking about, I guess, one, your experiences in your career, and what you learned was good and what you wanted to learn how to do better? Have you been thinking about brewery culture and ways that it can be, I don't know, better in light of these conversations that are now coming into focus, but I know have been happening among women in beer for quite some time?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a great team with me right now. We have our production manager, Tony Barber, and then a cellar guy. And we're definitely going to be bringing a little more diversity to our team coming very soon. One of the other things I've been thinking about is just the quality of life of a brewer. It gets long and it gets super hard. And that's something that, you hear the old boy brewers be like, I was canning for 30 hours yesterday. And it's like, it doesn't have to be like that. Like, you can draw a line and have the life that you want and be a brewer. Like, that's something I think is so important. Is to be able, to set boundaries and not work yourself to death, because it definitely happens in this industry. Burnout is so real. Yeah. So just working smarter and not harder, and cutting it when you need to cut it and taking care of yourself is one of the most important things to me at this job.
Aside from cream ale, if cream ale is going to be the beer of the summer, I know pumpkin beers are going to start showing up pretty soon on the shelves. They don't count. What's the beer of autumn? What should we be excited about next season?
Oh man, I'm so psyched. So we're actually going to be brewing it coming up in a few weeks. We're going to start our fest beer that's going to lager for a good long time. I'm psyched about that. So we have those 2 big lagering tanks that I've played around a little bit with, but I'm definitely hitting my stride with. I've never worked with lager tanks before, so this is so fun for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, Lisa Allen is on Steal This Beer next week, and we were just talking with her from Heater Allen, and she was getting ready to put her fest beer in the tank for a bunch of good long weeks. So it's hope is on the way to everybody who is waiting for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I literally I don't take my dirndl off from mid-September to early October. I drink so much fest beer that I can't drink it till the next year because I'm so sick of it. But I'm definitely ready now.
Well, hopefully I'll be able to get up and have a proper leader with you in person. It's been far too long, but thanks for taking the phone call and being on the show this week. I appreciate it. I'm excited about all that you guys are doing, but it's also good to hear a brewer excited about what's happening these days.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That's Lee Lord of Narragansett. What do you think? Is this going to be the summer of cream ale? Send me a note, let me know, and share your thoughts on who else you think might want to be on this show. I'm at John Hall, that's JOHNHOLL at beeredge.com, or you can find me on Twitter at John_Hall. Beer Edge is all over social media at The Beer Edge, and don't forget the This Week in Rauch Beer Facebook page and our website, beeredge.com. There, you can learn about helping out the show and the site through advertising, or you can just reach out to Liz Melby. She's at liz@beeredge.com. And speaking of that, NZ Hops is a proud sponsor of Drink Beer, Think Beer. Harvest season has officially ended in New Zealand, and there are exciting hops to choose from, including Nelson Sauvin, Motueka, Rawaka, and the newest hop in the lineup, Nectaron. The white wine, stone fruit, and tropical fruit notes, layered with pine, citrus, and herbal notes, offer a range of flavors unlike any other growing region in the world. Learn more about what they can do for your beers by visiting nzhops.co.nz or finding NZ Hops on social media. Remember to check out Steal This Beer every Monday and the BYO Nano podcast on the 15th of every month. As always, Nate Schweber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and please defend Pilsner. I'm John Hall. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'm going to be back again to drink beer and to think beer.